so today I want to talk about a film called The Wandering Earth, or in Chinese, in its original language, 流浪地球. It literally means an earth in exile, as a literal translation, and it's based on a short story by, I think, the most celebrated science fiction writer in China today, Liu Cixin, who is of the three-body problem fame, which is a tremendous trilogy of books that I highly recommend. So back to the film. The film is directed by Guo Fan, and it was released during the Chinese New Year holidays. And it's already made close to, I think, 20 billion RMB, which is the equivalent to about 300 million US dollars. That is not only a testament to the Chinese box office, but also to how much it's resonated with Chinese audiences. So I suppose an overall summary of the film. The film is set in a future Earth in which the sun is about to expand and consume the entire solar system. So in response to that, humanity gathers and builds these giant engines to first stop the rotation of the Earth, and then to build propeller suspensions on one side of the Earth to essentially propel the Earth in a very exaggerated orbit, first to leave the solar system, and then to find its new home, which I think is about 3.9 light years away. And this is something that in the world of the film would take about 140 generations. So we meet kind of the bulk of the film with a young boy who grows up when the Earth has already stopped its rotations and it's on its way out of the solar system. We meet him when he's about, I want to say, 20 years old, as Earth is passing Jupiter, and kind of experiencing the gravitational pulls and the changes to its journey from Jupiter, and kind of his relationship with his father, who is a cosmonaut, an astronaut on like a forward station, navigating the trajectory of the Earth. And this young boy hasn't seen his father for about 15 years, ever since, the beginning of this journey. And in the beginning, it is about, it's on the day that the father is about to come home for the first time in like almost 2 decades. And the young boy being very resistant to it because he is mad at the father for having left him for all these years. And so he goes to the surface of the Earth to kind of escape from this impending meeting with his father. But of course, the trajectory of Earth leaving the solar system is affected by the gravitational pull of Jupiter. There is, of course, an instant in which all of humanity and all of Earth literally is at stake, and how the father and son work together to overcome this peril of humanity and to continue this journey of the wandering Earth into our new home. So that is kind of the overall arch of the story. And it's filled with some of, if not the best special effects I have ever seen from a Chinese film. I think I watched it here at the AMC in IMAX 3D. It held up beautifully, I would say, to a lot of recent science fiction films. It's got that hard science explanation behind it. There's a lot of expository to make us understand how it could potentially work. And I do think the overall theme of the story and the impetus for the story comes from, a short story by a great hard science fiction writer. So it really evokes kind of, I would say, like our imaginations and our collective desire to survive of a human species. So it's a film that I would recommend that you do check out. If there's a theater near you that does show it, I think there's several, scattered throughout the United States. And I can almost guarantee that it will, appear on one of the streaming platforms inevitably, because it is quite, a worthy film in that regard. So one part I do want to mention is that the film harkens back to some of science fiction's greatest hits in, the last couple of decades. The oldest one being 2001: A Space Odyssey, along with Interstellar, Gravity, and also Rogue One. But it does manage to stitch everything together and serve the overall plot of the story. So the similarities with 2001: A Space Odyssey comes from a very similar module to HAL 9000 that exists in this film. It's called MOS, and it exists on this navigation system that the father is, the leader of. And he makes some independent decisions that are very similar, kind of in vein to what HAL does in 2001. And the similarities to Gravity is essentially in its space sequences. There is a spacewalk sequence of 2 astronauts that very much reminds you of the dynamic between Sandra Bullock and George Clooney in Gravity. But it's beautifully shot, and it's very well done special effects. And so, it's definitely something to be marveled and enjoyed on the big screen if you have the opportunity. And Rogue One, there is a small band of our main characters who try to save the trajectory of the Earth, and in turn the entire humanity, by completing a series of tasks to be able to kind of save the Earth's trajectory. And that harkens a lot back to Rogue One. And finally, the emotional core of the story reminds me a lot of Interstellar. It's the relationship between, a son who despises the father for, leaving him at a young age to essentially serve humanity and save the Earth. Which reminds us a lot of, the relationship between Murph and Cooper in Interstellar. But this one also is very well done and very emotionally done. And I do think it kind of is at the core of the entire story. And so, we really feel for the main characters, especially the father and the son, and their sacrifices because of this relationship. And so all those elements are extremely well done. And I do think they form this patchwork quilt of, good science fiction mixed with good emotional story. And so you do have to suspend a little bit of disbelief in some of, the hard science elements and some of the plot points. But I do feel like that is a common thread with a lot of science fiction films these days. Go in with, tempered expectations. And I definitely think it's a journey to be enjoyed. There are other more specific elements that would run a little bit into spoilers. So we will be putting up detailed, review in both English and Chinese. So you can check it out. We will also be doing kind of a side-by-side comparison between what, is the scope of the short story, by the author that we love so much, and also, what the film took away from the short story. And I think that will give you kind of an idea of, the scope of the film, and also the scope of what the author originally intended. And it's quite fascinating. So check it out after you watch this. And thank you for watching.